Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the International Conference of Research on Language Education, I-RoLE 2021 again. My name is Muhammad Afandi and I will be your moderator for this keynote session. Ladies and gentlemen, this session is a semi-live presentation where a pre-recorded presentation of the speech will be played, after which we will open the session for question and answer, which will be conducted live. So if you have any question for our speaker, you can type your question in the chat box. Please provide your full name and affiliation along with your questions. Due to limited time, selected question will be highlighted and forwarded to the speaker directly. Before we begin, please kindly mute your devices to avoid any distractions. Thank you. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by introducing our speaker for this session. Dr. ALISON is a senior lecturer in English Language and Linguistics at the University of Wollongong, Australia. She is a functional linguist with an additional background in public health. Her research has mostly focused on medical discourse and register theory, but now she is also using linguistic techniques to contribute to the growing field of animal studies. Across these areas, she is particularly interested in how people construe and negotiate agency and identity, and how they align and disalign in spoken, written, and multimodal interaction. She has held nationally competitive research grants such as ARC, NHMRC, and tenders on subjects such as psychotherapeutic discourse, HIV medical consultation, and embodied meaning in surgical team interaction, and has supervised research students in clinical linguistics, medical discourse, registered intonation, academic English, and literary stylistic. She is currently the Vice President of the Australian Systemic Functional Linguistics Association and an editorial board member of the Animal Studies Journal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. ALISON with a speech entitled, "What Can Functional Linguists Contribute to the Transforming Health Discourses and Healthcare?"
I'm Alison Moore, and I'm very pleased to be here with you at I-RoLE 2021 and very grateful to the organisers for inviting me, so thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you around the question, what can functional linguistics contribute to transforming health discourses and health care? And the argument is based on the premise that, of course, ensuring good health and well-being is one of the world's most important goals. We shouldn't need to say it, but we do. We need to have a UN goal around it. And we also need to have UN goals around equity, because access to good health and the resources we need for it is far from equitable in our world. And language, of course, is really crucial, a crucial factor in who gets health and who gets health resources. So I'm a linguist, so I'm going to be focusing on linguistics, what linguistics can do, but I think most of what I'm talking about actually will apply to language studies and literary studies as well. So there are a number of reasons why language studies, literary studies, and linguistic studies are positioned to improve what they can contribute to health and well-being. One of these reasons is that we've had too limited a focus. Another is that we've often drawn too hard a line between theory, linguistic theory, and application. So we have had a steady stream of useful work from linguistics and our other disciplines, but it's not a coordinated field, certainly not in functional linguistics like it is in, like we have in educational linguistics, for instance. We can empower linguistics, literature and language studies, however, to contribute more by including a wider set of intervention points and methods, and by drawing on and elaborating on our own theoretical principles. And in fact, what we're trying to do in our work at Macquarie and Wollongong in Australia is to work with Firth's principle of constantly renewing our connection with the processes and patterns of life, which he said was the final justification for abstract linguistics, so the theoretical kind, not just the justification or the job of applied linguistics. So I mentioned that we need to take account of more intervention points. What do I mean by that? So an intervention points are the physical or conceptual places within a biological system or an institutional system where pressure can be applied to disrupt the existing function. What are the intervention points? What influences health? Factors other than direct health care in determining people's health status and lived experience of health. So you can see a range of factors there, from agriculture through to education, work, living conditions. So health services there is one of a number of items. And as I said in my abstract, when people sit down to try and work out what proportion, they often come up with quite small. Now, of course, that depends on many, many things, including what country we're talking about, what sector of the population we're talking about, what age groups and so on. But overall, it's less than we think. So now this is not, this is an interesting model. It's not the final model. It's still a problematic model. And of course, things like education are not unrelated to things like unemployment and living conditions. So there's lots of interactions between all of these phenomena. But where is culture in this map? I don't think this really adequately accounts for culture or for the semiotic representation of things like employment, unemployment, gender, ethnicity, aging, and so on. So as linguists, we've got a lot to contribute. There's still a lot to do that we can do to improve even just how the determinants of health are mapped, are conceptualized. So which points of intervention have been addressed? Most of the research that's been done is at this interface between the patient and the care team. So doctor-patient communication. There is also some that looks on the relationship between different clinicians, for instance. Some that takes health organisations as a bigger system perspective, an institutional perspective, and looks at that. And a very small amount that looks at the regulatory environment, the policy framework, and so on around health. And then, of course, there's that other stuff that I said wasn't in the other model, and it isn't really in this model either. And that's just the general milieu, the culture more broadly, and how that influences health. Tiny bit's been done on that. And I'm going to hopefully get through some examples of these different kinds of intervention points. So my first example to illustrate what I mean by everyday construal actually comes from Michael Halliday, who did a bit of work on health discourse himself when he wrote a paper about the grammar of pain. And Halliday uses the first 20 million words of the co-build corpus, which was pretty new at that time, showing that pain is, of course, multiply categorized. We treat it as a verb, we treat it as a noun, we treat it as an adjective. Says Halliday, we're more likely to hear some patterns with pain than others. And if we're talking about headache, we're more likely to hear, I have a headache, rather than my head aches, or my head is aching or hurts. And that's got to do, he says, his interpretation is that that's got to do with the nature of head pain, and that we're much more likely to present the self, the whole I, me, as the starting out point for this pain, or grammatically as the theme of the clause. Now, this is not just in English. It's also true in French, Russian, and Chinese, which apparently show a similar pattern. And these have also been replicated by other scholars for other languages, including Greek. And much of our work in Macquarie and Wollongong draws on that kind of spirit. But most of what I've done is look at the clinician-patient interface. So I'm critiquing myself as much as anything when I say we need to expand our horizons to other intervention points. What do we already know? So as a background, we know that effective communication improves treatment decisions, improves people's adherence to their treatment, and it can improve health outcomes in some conditions. But effective communication may also lead people to do what's called rational non-compliance, in other words, resisting or delaying taking the doctor's treatment. That's not always a bad thing. And one of the things that allows us to think about is the way in which doctor-patient agency is distributed, and whether or not we can think of a world in which doctors' agency and patients' agency, and maybe some other people's agency as well, is actually cumulative and not just divided up so that the more they have, the less I have, etc. In order to study this area, I have used Halliday's concept of register, which he says is the necessary mediating concept that enables us to establish the continuity between a text and its socio-semiotic or eco-social environment. In other words, it's a setting in the semantics that bridges between the context and the wording and also the sounding. Also thinking of register situated instantially, so thinking of register as sub-potential within a language. So if we're looking at medical contexts, we're looking at certain kinds of meanings that can be made. If we're looking at HIV medicine, particular kinds of meanings within that. Joint decision-making, which I'm interested in, will be sort of down towards here, and ultimately we get down to individual texts, which can be compared for their consistency and variation. Within this, I've also used context modelling in terms of generic structure potential, so using Hassan's approach to modelling genre, or inspired by it, but taking a concept like joint decision-making in health, in this case in HIV medicine, and doing what we do with, for instance, academic essays and other kinds of contexts where we model the structure and look at the presence of those elements of structure as being crucial for the effective production of that text type. And this kind of analogy applies quite well in healthcare communication as well. So that we have a context that has a number of phases, and then after the bearings, pathways and amplification phases, which are around knowledge calibration, there's a phase in which the parties, 2 or 3 or however many are there, declare their hand in terms of what their recommendation or preference is. These are the kind of contextual elements. We can also identify what are the key semantic areas that are going to be involved in making those meanings, that will have to be there in order for us to see a declaration in the flesh, as it were, or to say, oh, well, there wasn't one of those. It was an element that was missing in that particular consultation. So agency, speech function, commands versus questions and so on, and the realis-irrealis distinction, whether something's anchored in time and space or anchored in judgment or the future. And then we can look at how those meanings are realised by particular wording. So I'll give you an example. A doctor called Michael and a patient called Trevor. They're discussing Trevor's test results, his viral load test results, and the patient's lack of compliance, actually, lack of being regular with taking his treatment, and thinking about a possible change in medicines because, as the doctor says, the viral load shows without question that the antivirals, the antiviral medicine, aren't working, yeah. But the patient says, well, maybe because like that was a week before, would it show in that week? Yeah, if you'd stopped, for example, says the doctor, yeah. Then the patient picks up the initiative and says, oh, it probably would have shown in that. Okay, well, we'll leave it for another 2 weeks. The doctor says, okay, goes along with it. And then there's a long gap where they talk about some other things. But then the doctor comes back to writing this decision. So moving on to the enactment phase from the declaration of what the different parties' preferences are. He writes it in the notes and he says, he'll probably need a change of antivirals, but Michael has asked to postpone this for a week, for a 2-week period. What'll I write? While he improves his compliance. And the challenge for analysis is as follows. The patient, in a sense, has interrupted the doctor's medical reasoning, his line of reasoning, suggesting that, no, there is a question. It's not without question. There is a question. This is my question. And now that you've supplied me with the answer, this is my decision. So in saying this, the patient is construing quite a high degree of agency. and it may strike you as a bit unusual. It's not that unusual in HIV medicine. It's actually a characteristic of HIV medicine. But as analysts, when we're looking for agency in this kind of context, we won't find it in the transitivity on the whole. If we just analyse clause transitivity, for instance, which is often the way that agency is examined in text analysis, then we won't get a strong sense with what we really feel is going on as kind of participant analysts of the context, if you like. So the doctor has gone along with it, but notice how he has refashioned the patient's utterance. And rather than saying Michael's decided, he says Michael has asked. Possibly fits better with his own kind of understanding of what the hierarchical roles are or what the agentive roles are in this context. So what's interesting about this is that these complex, reciprocal and shifting from phase to phase agentive relations are very significant as part of the register profile for HIV medicine and for joint decision-making in medicine. And HIV medicine is a domain that's known to have very high rates of patient participation, patient knowledge, medicalisation and decision-making. We can use tools from, for instance, Hassan's message semantics project, a network, a linguistic network in the SFL tradition that gives quite a lot of detail in the kinds of speech functions, delicate choices in the kinds of speech functions. So the patient has made some kind of a command, some kind of a demand for goods and services here, but it's not a bald one. It's not an exhortative one like change it, don't change it. It's a suggestive one. It's assertive, but it's still suggestive. It's we'll do this. It's not a kind of bald command. So that's been useful in my work too. Let's move on to the healthcare system more broadly. And here I'm going to mention some work by Christian Matheson from Hong Kong, but who was also at Macquarie while I was there. And this is a great paper if you're interested in linguistics and healthcare, because Matheson goes through and draws out quite a lot of really interesting thinking about his own work on register. But he also says that it's no longer enough for patients to be seen as persons. Once they would have been seen as objects, we've moved into a period where they're seen as persons and we have person-centered care, patient-centered care and so on. But Matheson wants us to go a bit further and think of patients as meaners. So they're not just individual biological, social people, but they're individual linguistic, semiotic people as well who have their own kind of meaning networks. Just to give you a sense of the kind of complexity that some of Christian's work brings out and his colleagues, especially in this work on emergent. This is from Hong Kong. He's got here a map of one patient's journey from the beginning of entering emergency through to being discharged. And you can see there's complexity in terms of the kind of language that's being spoken. So grey for written English. So English is always written in this context, nearly always anyway. The spoken language is generally Cantonese or Mandarin. So there's complexity there. And then, of course, doctors and nurses and patients and different configurations of those roles speaking to each other. But that's by no means as complex as it can get. And in one related project to this project, one patient actually had 225 communication encounters within 1 2-hour period, which Slade et al. Have mapped like this. So each one of these little boxes is a conversation with either a doctor or a patient, a doctor or a nurse or an ambulance officer. So the first ones there are ambulance officers. And as Slade et al. Write, is it any wonder that this patient at one point said, who are my specialists, please? Can someone please tell me who my specialists are? But this is the kind of communicative context, system-oriented focus on the communicative context of what happens, what people's meaning experiences is like when they're in an emergency department. And this, of course, won't be news to you if you've ever been to emergency. Another project that this large team broadly have undertaken is on the practice of handover from shift to shift, clinical handover, where what's going on with the different patients needs to be reported to the next people who are going to be responsible. And this is an amazing piece of work. This has been undertaken in a hospital, St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney. And since their project, they have had a 52% reduction in falls by patients within the ward, where they only did this on one ward, but within that ward, and a 21% decline in wrong medicine, so in medicine errors, and some other declines as well. Now, I just want to move to some of my own work on healthcare system and the sort of interface between the healthcare system more broadly and medical education. So this is another context where the idea of structure, genre structure, can come in handy. And the part of the surgical context that we're going to be looking at for a couple of minutes, this is colorectal surgery. And it's an abdominoperineal dissection or a bowel resection that they're doing. And we can plot the stages like so, anaesthetize the patient, prepare, open the wound, mobilize the part that needs to be taken out, remove the cancerous tissue or the offending piece, join it, close it up again. And we're looking at the mobilized part. So they're trying to get down underneath what they think is cancer. And so this is what I've called the taking over episode, and the reason will become obvious. We have a sort of a phasal arrangement, and in this phase, they have been working at trying to mobilize the part that's diseased for some, and the specialist is the person who's actually assisting. The registrar, the senior trainee, is the one who's actually performing the operation, and she's taking a little while to get what needs to be done. And the specialist says, "Is it coming?" with that rising tone like that, and she says in a tone 4, "It is." That is, there's a kind of yes, but at the end of it. "It is." And she goes on to say, "Jenny," referring to another student, to a young an undergraduate student anyway, an unqualified doctor. "Jenny, I'm just going to move you in deeper. Grab that." And she's trying to kind of get her hands in the right place and so on. There, just there. "Oh, how annoying. I can feel it." And the specialist says, he's coaching, "Are your fingers down below it?" She's still in the moment. It's almost like a suction effect at the moment in the pelvis. "My fingers are below it." "Okay, well, pull up on them hard," he says. "Pull up on that band." And then they're working away. And then she goes, "Oh, nah, this is, nah." And he goes, "Faffing. It's faffing, isn't it?" "Yeah, it is faffing," says the senior trainee. And he sort of then takes over a little bit semiotically and reconstrues what's happening. "Oh, that's not the word. Oh, look, it's all very stiff in here just from this previous disease. So let's just go down the middle. Let's just do this." She gives us some direct instructions. I won't go through all the detail, but they start up again. They have another go, but before long, we get this, which sounds like this. I'll just show you. So here you can see the senior registrar on the right. She's performing the operation. Over on the left, you can't see him very well, is the senior surgeon, the professor who's supervising her. A medical student in the foreground in the left, and a very senior nurse on the right in the foreground. And this is what happens next.
And get down there, pull on that bit, and I'll see if April and I can show you that.
She has another go.
Sorry. I'm in the way, aren't I?
No, I just can't stand it anymore.
I'm actually getting somewhere
No,
now.
you're doing fine.
You want to take over, don't you?
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
I absolutely don't want to take over.
You do, I feel.
Well, no, I don't.
I didn't say I was going to let you. I just said...
Now what's happened there? They have stopped, they have swapped. So yes, it was inevitable. He was itching to do it, but he did need to do it because of the complex context in surgery, where he's both an educator, of course, and he's responsible for the patient's health. So at some point, if the operation is taking too long for the person who's training in it, then to actually keep it going fast enough for patient health, then he will have to step in. But interestingly, in this context, like the HIV context, we have a really complex, reciprocal and negotiated agency that's actually crucial to allowing both the registrar to have the maximum time and the maximum opportunity to gain confidence and practice the skills, whilst also having a kind of safety valve for the senior doctor to take over just at the moment when it really does become necessary. Now, we can also examine this agentive role in this context, not just by looking at the language, but also by looking at body alignment, which turns out to be quite interesting and quite crucial. Here's just an example from a paper where I have mapped with the little dots the coming together and moving apart of the heads, both horizontally and vertically, and where the location of the head is partially signifying and negotiating who's actually in control of this part of the operation now, who's calling a halt to that phase and negotiating what we're going to do next, and sort of resonating with McNeil's work and other people working, other key figures in gesture studies. It's the movement, the body movement that's right at the vanguard. The moves with the body leaning back to call a halt to that phase happen just before the language comes in and the language patterns change to signify a new stage or phase in the context. Yes, here's some more detail around the analysis, also using Hassan's message semantics again. Again, looking at what kind of commands get made in this context. And so we can map the different kinds of commands and then see how they're distributed by stage and phase, by level of seniority, and by institutional role, etc. And so what we find when we do that is that the registrar has very few commands, some but very few different types of commands. She doesn't use some of the more kind of nuanced commands, like the suggestive kind, we'll do this, we'll just do that, or consultative commands like let's. The surgeon, on the other hand, has a higher frequency of commands, a wider addressee set, so he commands everybody on the surgical team. The range, he's got a broader range, and this is linked with his multiplex role, both as an educator and as a supervisor of everything that's going on in that room. And his type of command changes with the logogenetic unfolding of this context as the context moves through the different generic stages, and when he needs to be quite direct in actually taking the lead versus giving some commands, but with giving her the sense that she is actually someone who's got an opinion, who's got some agency there. Right, so I've just got a couple of minutes left to talk about culture outside the health sector. And there are, of course, many, many, many ways in which this happens, but this is just one area where there's been some research. I have done some research in this area myself, but I want to show you this research by Harvey and Brooks on representations of dementia using stock images. So stock images sort of seem like trivial bits of, they don't seem like very important bits of culture, but they can expose some of the ways that common and taken for granted forms of cultural representation are able to shape public understanding. In their study, they found mostly images like this, where women, senior women here, receiving help, looking very vague, staring into the distance, inside, looking disoriented, being disoriented, not engaging, and needing to be looked after only. There were some, like this one, which was figure 3 in their paper. This woman has some engagement in her face. You can see her whole body. Her body and her head are working in orientation together to the person that she's with. But we still have her lower and looking up at the carer or family member. And this was very, very. Now I want to finish off. No, I can't leave you without saying anything about the unprecedented year, the year that the Oxford Dictionary didn't even announce a word of the year. For those who are interested in this topic, there's a great collection in Multilingua, the journal Multilingua, volume 39. This is my last example, and it's a positive one, some positive discourse analysis by Chen. What happened was that some Asian countries sent supplies, medical supplies, prevention supplies for COVID to China. And when they were doing so, they actually pasted classical Chinese poetry onto the boxes. And they had beautiful sentiments on them, like, we enjoy the same moonlight under the same sky. And then a little bit later, China was able to send similar poems back to Japan and South Korea. And you see a couple of examples there. And Chen calls this demonstrating emotional resonance between the countries, and also managing issues of reciprocality and building trust and actually sort of international diplomacy in the COVID crisis. So thanks for bearing with me. What are my implications and conclusions? Well, I hope to have given you the impression, I hope I have, that linguistics, literature and language studies already are being useful for the health sector and for understanding how we can improve health even outside by looking at things that are happening outside the health sector. But there's still a lot to do. Now, training of healthcare professions, of course, is one area, but there are many other avenues that we can use for empowering those people who shape the health landscape and who also shape their own health. One of the things that we really need to do is, like we do in education, engage with policymakers and communities. And there are some fantastic partners out there. There are some brilliant people who will be really, if you're interested in working in this space, there will be some people who are working in health or working in media or working in other areas that will be really very, very valuable to you, and will also be really energized and fired up by your language expertise. So if you have been thinking about getting to do some work, or if you're already doing some work, I'd love to hear. Thank you very much, and terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, for your sharing session with us on your research work. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Alison Moore all the way live from Wollongong, Australia, to answer a few questions. So, dear Dr. Moore, welcome to I-RoLE2021, and we are so pleased of having you in the conference. Okay, Dr. Moore, the first question is, based on your slide just now, you mentioned about a wider set of interventions and methods. Can you explain more on that? And the second question is, what can functional linguists help or do to mediate between the specialist, the doctor, and HIV patient in making life-death decision?
Great. Look, I think there's a little bit of a delay, so I'm sorry about that. But it's lovely to see you, and it's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your first question. It's a great question. What do I mean by a wider set of intervention points? That's the main thing I was talking about, the intervention points. So really, I mean that mostly we've been concentrating on looking at how doctors and patients talk to each other. And as linguists, that's been the main place where we think we can make things better for patients, where we can maybe train doctors to speak more clearly, give the right kind of information to patients. But there are lots of other places in the health system and outside of it where there are little points of, there are just aspects of that practice that can be intervened on, can be changed in order to give everybody better health. So there are places inside the health system that aren't just where the doctor and the patient talks to each other, but things like my work on where the different surgeons talk to each other. The patient is completely asleep, or let's hope so, during those kinds of operations. But that's a really important intervention point to make sure that the kind of language and the other semiotic systems that are being used are all working towards effectiveness and safety and equity. Now, outside the health sector, there are also many, many places where what goes on there is likely to have a big effect on our health. So just take, for instance, tobacco advertising. It's a big success story in some ways in terms of public health, but how much has the way in which the meanings were exchanged around the people, the people who are trying to prevent tobacco advertising, because it really causes people to smoke and then they get lung cancer and heart disease and so on. How much has that been analysed? Not very much. There is some work coming out at the moment, actually, so look out for that if you're interested in it. Or even other things like, how does food what kind of language is used in food labelling? Is it used? Are the right languages used? What kind of languages have been used in COVID prevention and management techniques? Have the right languages been used? If they're the right languages, are they actually in a form that, like, people may or may not have digital access to the sorts of things that have been made for them in the correct language? And then even if it isn't in the right language, does it have the right practices? So if you're talking to a group that doesn't, a group of people that doesn't really have get their water from faucets, but you tell them how to wash your hands and close off the faucet, is that really useful? Not really. So when I'm saying extra intervention points, I mean largely just looking at more things than how doctors and patients talk to each other as spaces where language specialists can actually be involved to produce change. Okay, so and the second question, in my experience, what about helping mediate between doctors and patients, making life-death decisions? So that's a really interesting question. In the work that I've done on HIV, I have only looked at making treatment decisions, not end-of-life decisions. But elsewhere, with looking in the context of cancer and perhaps some, more generally in terms of palliative care, working with palliative care specialists, I have looked at how language specialists can help throw light on what's going on in palliative care and end-of-life situations. So, for instance, we were able to work with some palliative care specialists on producing national consensus guidelines for how to talk about end-of-life issues. That was published in the main medical journal in Australia, the MJA. And some of the work that I did in relation to that addresses the issue of what kind of questions are used. So normally, clinicians are told that they should use open questions when talking about things like how people are going when they're getting towards the end of their life. But in fact, the work that I did, again using some of Rakai Hassan's approaches, showed that both closed questions and open questions were useful, and sometimes the closed questions were really, really useful. And the point is to look at how different questions work in a sequence of question asking, because questions usually aren't just one thing. You kind of have question configurations that are series of moves that can really kind of be adding up to one question. And elsewhere, my colleague Neda Karimi, who's done some great work in this area, has looked at, for instance, the way that patients talk about themselves who are in advanced cancer care. They don't associate themselves with death and dying in terms of, so she did a transitivity analysis, a transitivity concordance that looked at this. They tend to still associate themselves in terms of the representational function of language with life, and this is because they want to maintain the meaningfulness of their lives and the agency at the end of their life. So when we look at the way that patients talk about themselves, and when we compare that with the way that sort of health education and brochures around how you can talk to your clinician and so on depict patients, they actually are quite different, and it would be helpful, hopefully, for the people who are working, the people who are clinicians themselves, but people are also working to produce advice brochures, decision aids, those kinds of things for patients and families, to know the way in which patients actually do talk about themselves and want to talk about themselves, and to talk about them like that, write about them like that in the material that they provide. So that's just a couple of examples. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, for your sharing your experience in the medical linguistic, which is actually something pretty new in Malaysia, specifically. Ladies and gentlemen, we are actually the organizing committee of I-RoLE 2021 and Academy of English Studies of UiTM Malacca are so honored to have Dr. Alison Moore here with us for her willingness to be part of the research. And for your information, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Alison Moore was actually my PhD supervisor, and she has made sure that I passed my PhD after so many years. With that, Dr. Moore, thank you very much for your participation. How all of us here wish that you could fly to Malaysia and be in Malaysia to kind of enjoy the beautiful country of Malaysia and the historic city of Malacca. But unfortunately,
me too.
not like what you mentioned just now, the poetry, creativity in your slide regarding COVID thing. So we hope that the world's going to be better so that everybody can visit each other and, just to be together. So thank you again, Dr. Moore, everybody.
Great to see you, Afandi, and thank you so much for the invitation.
And please come back at 3 for one plenary session, one para session number 5, and workshop for professionals as well as students. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Dr. Moore. All the best to you, Dr. Moore, and then stay safe. Okay, see you in the future, Dr. Moore. Thank you, everyone.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the International Conference of Research on Language Education, I-RoLE 2021, Day 2. My name is Wan Muhammad Hamdi, and I will be your moderator for this plenary session. This is semi-live presentation, where pre-recorded presentation will be played and followed by a live Q&A session. If you have any question for our speaker, you can type your question in the chat box. Do provide your full name and affiliation along with your question. Selected question will be highlighted and forwarded to the speaker directly. With us today, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Asma binti Abdul Rahman. Dr. Asma binti Abdul Rahman is Associate Professor of Education, Linguistic Education of the Islamic Science University Malaysia, Bachelor Human Science in Arabic Language and Literature from IIUM, Master in Arabic Studies and Islamic Civilization from UKM, and PhD in Education from UKM. She has 25 years of experience in linguistic education, Arabic Studies, and Islamic Civilization. She also has 5 years of experience as assistant doctor in the Hospital Hira At-Takhasusi, specialist in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. She has worked as coordinator in Whole Center in USIM. She has served as teacher, lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor, panelist, advisor, supervisor, and reviewer for linguistic education in Asian countries like Malaysia, Korea, Brunei, Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, and Laos, And then the Middle East countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, Yemen, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, and Algeria. She has been a visiting professor of 7 universities in Morocco. She has been an education board of 5 journals and reviewers of manuscripts for over 20 journals. She has received multiple awards from USIN for her teaching, research, and service. Without further delay, let us listen to Associate Professor Dr. ASMA binti Abdul Rahman.
Assalamu alaikum and thank you to the chairman and whole committee member for organizing an international conference on linguistics. I'll be presenting multiple triple relational Latin lexicology, phonology, semantic analysis model for extracting Quranic concept, a new innovative for sustainable society. Al-Quran is a divine text which represents the purest and most authentic form of the classical Arabic language. In order to understand the meaning of each verse, a deep knowledge of Arabic linguistics is essential. Therefore, our scholars have made their efforts by engaging themselves in the works of explaining Al-Quran's words, interpreting its meaning into Arabic and other languages. Currently, more people are interested in knowing the content of Al-Quran, especially for non-Muslims after 9/11 tragedy. Thus, a flexible model that can represent Quranic concept is required for people to understand the content of the Quran. In this research, we propose a multi-relational Latin lexicology, phonology, semantic analysis model based on a combination of Arabic morphology and 6 multiple relations between words, which are synonym, antonym, hypernym, hyponym, homonyms, and meronyms to precisely extract Quranic concept. The existing literatures focus only on very limited relationships between words which could not extract the in-depth concept of Quranic without considering the importance of Arabic morphology. Therefore, the objectives of this research are 1. To analyze and categorize Quranic words according to Arabic morphology patterns. 2. To propose a new model for extracting Quranic concept. 3. To investigate semantic relationships between Quranic words. And 4. To validate the proposed model with Arabic linguistic and Quranic experts. This research will be conducted qualitatively through content analysis approach technique. It is expected that the model will come out with a precise analysis for extracting Quranic concept. This will be very significant in enhancing the overall Quran's understanding among the society in Malaysia and Muslims world. Introduction. In linguistic study, a concept is referred as a mental structure which totally depends on relationships between linguistic representatives amongst words and phrases. However, the interchangeable relationship could happen due to the inherent conciseness of natural language. Therefore, many researchers try to solve this problem using ontology approach and latent semantic analysis. It is supported by Chang and Meek 2013, Oskan and Aslandagan 2004, but it needs some considerations before it can be implemented on Arabic, especially in Al-Quran, which represents a special classical Arabic language. In linguistic study, a concept is referred as a mental structure which totally depends on the relationship between linguistic representative amongst words and phrases. However, the interchangeable relationship could happen due to the inherent conciseness of natural language. Many researchers try to solve this problem using ontology approach and LSA, but it needs some considerations before it can be implemented on Arabic, especially in Al-Quran, which represents a special classical Arabic language. The uniqueness of Arabic lexicology, phonology, semantic makes the combination with LSA and ontology more significant to extract Quranic concept. It is because morphology semantic analysis is a basic step in various applications, including text mining, information retrieval, machine translation, automatic summarization, and Arabic learning system. It's also supported by the SAINS 2011. LSA, on the other hand, has limitations, such as difficulty in differentiating fine-grained relations between lexical semantics, synonyms, antonyms, and hypernyms. Due to that limitation, various studies have been carried out to overcome this weakness of LSA, introducing relational latent semantic analysis using synonym, antonym, and hypernym, but it has not yet been applied on Arabic texts such as Al-Quran. Furthermore, Quranic ontology studies are lacking accuracy of language because it depends on the translated version of Al-Quran and uses a plastic noun. Continue. The existing literature shows that there are still gaps and problems in extracting Quranic concepts, as have been mentioned previously, due to inappropriate approaches that have been used, ignoring the importance of Arabic morphology and LSA in deriving the meaning of Quranic word. Therefore, in order to address the above-mentioned problem, we, as a researcher, proposed a new model in extracting Quranic concept based on Arabic morphology and multi-relational Latin semantic analysis using combination of 6 multiple relations between words, which are synonym, antonym, hypernym, hyponym, holonym, and meronym. The objectives are 1. To analyze and categorize Quranic words according to Arabic lexicology, phonology, semantic patterns. 2. To investigate semantic relationships between Quranic words. 3. To propose a new model for extracting Quranic concept. And 4. To validate the proposed model. On research question 1. How to analyze and categorize Quranic words according to Arabic lexicology, phonology, semantics patterns. 2. What is result of investigate semantic relationships between Quranic words. 3. How to propose a new multi-relational Latin lexicology, phonology, semantic analysis for extracting Quranic concept. And question number 4. What is the subject matter expert's opinion about the proposed model? This research is focusing on designing a multi-relational LSA model in extracting Quranic concept based on combination of Arabic morphology and 6 multiple relations between words. The researcher will use text analysis method as follows. The first phase is morphology logical root analysis. Second phase, to propose a new model for extracting Quranic concept. The result then will be evaluated by 2 groups of experts. First group is an Arabic linguist who will examine morphology, logical root analysis, and the merging process with multi-relational Latin semantic analysis. And 2. Quranic experts who examine holistically the concept of sight in Al-Quran according to Islamic perspective. The evaluation will be conducted in focus group interview. Any suggestion or feedbacks will be taken into consideration to improve the model. Second phase, to propose a new model for extracting Quranic concept. Based on previous first phase result, the researcher will follow the next steps. Step 1. Create and propose a model using 6 multiple relations between words in Latin semantic analysis as follows. Synonym mean a word or phrase that means exactly or nearly the same as another word or phrase in the same language. Antonym mean a word opposite in meaning to another. Hypernym, a word with a broad meaning constituting a category into which words with more specific meanings fall. Hyponym mean a word of more specific meaning than a general or superordinate term applicable to it. And holonym is a concept of which this concept forms a part. And meronym is a term that denotes parts of something. Step 2 is related connection of word to conceptual meaning then will be identified. Step 3, linking the related connections to key concept in 3-form drawing. And step 4, describing the design of extracting Quranic concept based on ontological approach in latent semantic analysis. Third phase, investigating semantic relationships between Quranic words. The proposed model will be validated by testing a concept of sight in Quran as a sample. Fourth phase, validating the proposed model. The result then will be evaluated by 2 groups of experts. One, an Arabic linguist who will examine syntax logical root analysis and the merging process with multi-relational latent semantic analysis, and 2, Quranic experts who examine holistically the concept of sight in Al-Quran according to Islamic perspective. The evaluation will be conducted in focus group interview. Any suggestion or feedbacks will be taken into consideration to improve the model. Findings and a new novelty. 1. Policies for government agencies to help them curb and solve the educational system in teaching and learning Arabic linguistics training and practices in tricking consumers into thinking that product by apply a new innovative method for whole level of students and society. This is a new and innovative, thus no comparable product existed in the market. Impact on human being and socioeconomics. The proposed model have improved knowledge and linguistic skills in the production of higher quality of human capital. Furthermore, the researchers was sales from text and reference, more familiar books, CDs and courses, training, workshop generate additional income for. And 2, harmonized society and community where Muslim and non-Muslims can sit together, enjoying their communication with multiple lingual. 3, academically closing the gap on communication between society and community-related research, providing the aspect of language, culture, and society perspective. We have to find that the research output will be useful to attract foreign direct investors, mainly Asian countries, and other potential interested investors from Middle East and Europe to understand the opportunity in linguistic education, to join in the development of Malaysia and other countries of renewable energy, specifically in two identified cluster linguistics education with a new innovative method, cultures hub and tourism for sustainable of society. I show to all of you the example of analyzing extracting Quranic concept. This is a sample of multi-relational Latin formula analysis. This is a model of the new proposed model in Quranic ontology. It shows extracting Quranic proposed model concept from various multiple relationships between words. This slide also shows a sample of multi-relational Latin from formula analysis. A sample of proposed model in using MMRLLE XICOLPHONOSEMC to extract Quranic concepts, extracting Quranic of proposed model concept from various multiple relationship between in the structure of sentence. That's all for today and thank you.
Okay, let us now welcome Associate Professor Dr. ASMA binti Abdul Rahman for the question and answer session. Welcome, Doctor. Let us now welcome Associate Professor Dr. ASMA binti Abdul Rahman. Okay. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, Associate Professor Dr. ASMA.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Hope you can listen to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you can turn on your camera, it's going to be better.
Okay. Dah buka dah.
Okay, how are you, Doctor?
Fine, Alhamdulillah. And Dr. Hamdi, Ustaz Hamdi, كيف حالك? عساك بخير.
Any response from you, Doctor?
Okay, nothing is, it is a presentation about the travel that is was invited in the Cambridge University on 26th to 28th at July. But I asked to Dr. Afandi to be presented this paper in the UITM. Okay.
Okay, Doctor. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining us in this session.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to read the question posted from Muhammad Nur Afandi Ibrahim asking, how can translation of Quran help non-Muslim to understand the semantic of Arabic? Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, when we see that is when the Quran, what I do in this model, that is to Muslim and non-Muslim people, okay, non-Muslim and Muslim and non-Muslim people, that when they read it, okay, recited Quran Kareem, and we will take it every word, okay, when we have a 18 stage, okay, 18 stage categorized to model to analysis this model. Okay, the first categorize, this is the first one is from this research. Okay, the first one we will take it from the Quran, every word, a single word that is في مطابقة في جناس في تشبيه وغيرها من ذلك. I cannot to translate every word for him and to mean and others. After that, we will put this word in the same meaning, meaning, okay, and exchange of the meaning, okay, exchange the meaning, and we will translate this, not translate, okay, extract of this enhancing of the word by analysis this word, okay, in the by Quranic concept. That is all from me. If he want more, he can ask me or calling me, okay. Hello.
Okay. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Asma, for answering the questions. I would like to once again thanks Associate Professor Dr. Asma for joining us today and for sharing with us your research. I would also like to thank all of you, our audience, for attending and participating in this session today, and also for being such a wonderful crowd. On behalf of the organizing committee of I-RoLE 2021, I would like to invite all of you to join us for the closing session scheduled next. See you there. Thank you and have a nice day.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening and welcome to the International Conference of Research on Language Education, I-RoLE2021 closing ceremony. My name is Adi Idham bin Jailani, and on behalf of the organizing committee of I-RoLE2021, we are honored to have all of you, our distinguished guests, as part of our two-day conference. Ladies and gentlemen, let us take a moment and observe the national anthem of Malaysia, Negaraku, and the anthem of UiTM, Wawasan Setia Warga UiTM.
Kita jangan mudah terleka.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, with the tagline of engaging in change, empowering linguistic, literature, and language, the International Conference of Research on Language Education, I-RoLE 2021, is organized by Akademi Pengajian Bahasa, Universiti Teknologi Mara Cawangan Melaka, as a platform for local and international scholars and professionals to interact and share expertise, knowledge, and experience in language education. We also receive strong backing from our strategic partners, which are Chiang Rai Rajabat University of Thailand, Universitas Negeri Semarang, UNES of Indonesia, University Tun Hussein On, UTHM Malaysia, and University Technical Malaysia Melaka. Ladies and gentlemen, lend us your ears as we listen to the closing speech of I-RoLE 2021 by the Deputy Dean of Academic, Akademi Pengajian Bahasa UiTM, Dr. Muhammad Razi bin Mana. Please welcome Dr. Muhammad Razi.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful and most gracious. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome all speakers, presenters and participants to the International Conference of Research on Language Education 2021 or I-RoLE 2021, organized by the Akademi Pengajian Bahasa or APB UiTM Cawangan Melaka. I am Dr. Muhammad Razi, the Deputy Dean of Akademi Pengajian Bahasa, representing the Dean, Professor Dr. Osman Ismail, who is not with us today due to other commitments. While circumstances prevent a face-to-face event, we are proud to be hosting our first online conference given the new challenges of COVID-19 pandemic that has forced us to pivot to a completely virtual one. The theme for the two-day conference, Engaging in Change, Empowering Linguistics, Literature and Language, has been remotely set up to provide not only professionals but also novice researchers from all over the world with the opportunity to share their scholarly experiences and exchange knowledge in the different fields of languages, linguistics and literature in this increasingly complex terrain. Looking at the conference schedule and the many wonderful and accomplished guest speakers and presenters, this conference is indeed a remarkable avenue of learning, networking, and inspiration. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the I-RoLE 2021 Organizing Committee and those who are involved directly and indirectly in making this event a success. I hope this remarkable event will continue in the future. I also like to express my deepest thanks to the speakers and presenters who did their best to submit their presentation videos in due time to ease out the technicalities during the conference. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you will enjoy the benefit tremendously from the conference. We hope that your experience in this virtual conference will be a rewarding one that sparks new collaborations and areas of inquiry. With that, I would like to officially announce the end of I-RoLE 2021. I hope that all of you have had an exciting virtual experience at I-RoLE 2021 and anticipate seeing all of you again at our future events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Razi bin Manap, Deputy Dean of Academic, Akademi Pengajian Bahasa UiTM, for the inspiring speech to the participant of the conference and to officially close I-RoLE 2021. Distinguished guests, over the past 2 days, we have listened to over 80 submitted papers and 6 keynote speeches, as well as participating in 4 workshops and 2 plenary sessions. Our sincerest gratitude to not just the distinguished speakers that share their wealth of knowledge with us, but also to you, the participants, for making this conference a success. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now the moment we are all waiting for, the announcement of the Best Paper Award. For that, I welcome Dr. Amirul Azwan bin Abdul Aziz, Vice Chair of I-RoLE 2021, to announce the recipient of the Best Paper Award. Please welcome Dr. Amirul.
Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. It is a big pleasure to have all of you here in I-RoLE 2021. I would like to thank the benevolent support from all presenters and participants for joining us for the past 2 days. As recognition to the scholarly work that has been presented in this conference, I-RoLE 2021 is pleased to present the Gold, Silver, and Bronze Awards for 3 different categories, which are undergraduate, postgraduate, and professional category. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, all papers were evaluated by expert reviewers during the strict tentative rounds, grounded on a range of all-around evaluation criteria. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the hard and honest work of our professional and experienced reviewers, and as I was informed that it was difficult for them to decide the best of the best paper. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now the time for me to announce the winners. We will begin with the undergraduate category. It is my honor to announce that the Bronze Award goes to Kajian Pelaksanaan Pengajaran dan Pembelajaran di Rumah PDPR dalam talian bagi mata pelajaran Bahasa Jepun tingkatan 2 by Fatimah Zahra binti Zainal. The Silver Award goes to Learning Mandarin as First Language, the speech production of Mandarin plosive consonants by bilingual senior KDMs by Chai Chi Wah. And the Gold Award goes to Factors Affecting Academician Acceptance on E-Learning Application by Nur Afini Muhammad Muzi, Nur Aisyah Muhammad Nazir, Sufiyatul Farhain Abdul Muttalib, Shamsun Narni Muhammad Zukri, and Nur Zafarina Muhammad Fauzi. Moving on to the postgraduate category. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bronze Award goes to Impact of Achievement Goal Orientations and Growth Mindset on Language Performance of Secondary School EFL Learners in China by Wang Ruishi, Gurnam Kaur Sidhu and Priyadarshini Muthukrishnan. The Silver Award goes to postgraduate students' perceived and actual performance in critical reading skills by Arif Shamida, Gurnam Kaur Sidhu, and Sofa Matnawi. The Gold Award goes to Self-Directed Learning Readiness in Online Learning, a conceptual review paper by Masliza Duraman, Fauziah Duraman, Ahmad Izzat Muhammad Arifin, and Nurul Ashikin Duraman. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to professional category. The Bronze Award goes to Close Sensitivity of Inflectional Morphology in L2 English by Yuji Shuhama. The Silver Award goes to Motivational Orientations of Learning Japanese as a Foreign Language Among Undergraduates in a Public University in Malaysia by Kuldeep Kaur Makhtiar Singh, David Loh Erfu, Irene Leong Yok Chu, Fang Yuk Ngo, Chan Yan Seng, and Nurul Atikah Abdul Hamid. Finally, the Gold Award goes to Under the Spotlight, Students' Viewpoint in Oral Presentation Skills course during ODL, Open and Distance Learning by Nur Afifah Nordin, Nur Shafiqah Zabidin, Ho Fan Jin, Raihan Ibrahim, and Putri Nur Hidayah Kamaluddin. Congratulations to all winners. And lastly, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to wish all of you a happy and fortunate coming year, and thank you very much for your participation in I-RoLE 2021. We are looking forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you very much once again, and Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amirul Azwan bin Abdul Aziz, Vice Chair of I-RoLE 2021, for announcing the recipients of the Best Paper Award for I-RoLE 2021. Congratulations to all of the award winners. With that, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we have reached the end of our closing ceremony and our conference. On behalf of the hardworking committee of the International Conference of Research on Language Education, I-RoLE 2021, I would like to extend another round of thanks and appreciation to all of you, the participants and everyone in attendance, for joining us in this conference. Your support has made this conference a triumphant success. Dear participants, if you have any inquiries with regards to your certificates, pictures, videos, or the conference in general, please go to I-RoLE website, as we will continue updating the conference website with relevant information for the next few weeks. Allow me to end the closing ceremony with a traditional Malay pantun. Kalau ada sumur di ladang, boleh saya menumpang mandi. Kalau ada umur yang panjang, boleh kita berjumpa lagi. On to the next I-RoLE. Thank you very much and have a nice day.